Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to discuss movies and horror. And today I'm here to rank for you the Evil Dead movies.
It's coffee time!
In this video, I will be talking about all the Evil Dead movies. I'm going to keep it spoiler free. I will just comment on the things that make me like or dislike the movies and why I ranked them the way I did. Also, I will not be including the show Ash vs. the Evil Dead, even though I do enjoy it and it is part of the franchise. I decided to focus for this video only on the films. This low-budget movie franchise actually started with a short called Within the Woods in 1978. The first official film though that was released with the franchise's name, The Evil Dead, came out in 1981, directed by Sam Raimi, and we had as our main character Ash, played by Bruce Campbell. So far, 4 more movies would follow The Evil Dead, and we do have hopes though to get more in the future. It all began with a short film, but we do have here the effort of basically teenagers, really young director Sam Raimi with his brother Ted, and also Bruce Campbell. They kind of did this almost as a school project, like they were just guys trying to make a movie without really any budget, without really any special effects experience. They didn't know how to do things, so they were just kind of experimenting and going with it. And it is quite interesting how just the effort, the passion that they put into this movie ended up turning it into one of the most well-known movies, and one of those movies that changed a little bit the horror genre. The plot, the story is simple enough. We have a bunch of kids, a bunch of teenagers that go to a remote cabin in the woods hoping to have a good weekend getaway, when they basically end up releasing hell. And funny enough, this premise is something that was going to trigger a trope for the 80s horror movies, and for years to come we still get movies where a bunch of friends go to a cabin in the woods and things just go south. However, The Evil Dead was actually at the beginning banned in some countries due to the violence, the gore, and the sexual scenes. Even in countries like Germany, I have friends that told me when the movie came out in 1981, they went to the movies to watch it, and like a couple of days later it was banned. So that was the reaction that the movie also caused across the globe. There has been a lot of expectation to the new installment in the franchise, Evil Dead Rise, that just came out, and it has received quite positive reviews. Me myself, I really enjoyed it, and now that I've seen all the Evil Dead movies that are out there, I'm here to let you know my thoughts and my ranking. My hope is that also with the new release, a lot of people are gonna go back and rewatch the originals or experience them for the first time if they haven't. But of course, if you go back now to The Evil Dead from 1981 and you take a look at that, it might be that, you know, the messy effects and all of that might not have the same impact that the movie had when it came out, because people were truly horrified. Some of the Evil Dead movies feel a little bit more like a horror series film, but for the most part the movies always bring some sort of humor into it. Especially obviously The Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness are the ones that I find have the most comedy. The movie came out when zombies were starting to really be a big thing, but I feel like The Evil Dead took a spin on zombies and gave us something a little bit different. These are not just zombies that are raising up from the dead. These are people that are being possessed by an evil spirit. And this was also not a serial killer that was just killing people, which is something that started also with Halloween and movies like that. This was something that could happen to anyone, anywhere. Now let's start with the ranking. So I'm so sorry to tell you guys that my spot number 5 has to be for Army of Darkness from 1992. It's not that I don't like this movie, but it is for me the least good one in the whole franchise. Also, it is the only one I would say that is not particularly horror, is more of a fantasy movie. and it's probably arguably the campiest one of them all. They did try at the beginning to see if they could make this film actually PG-13, but they decided that it was not actually gonna work because they would have to cut way too many things, so they decided to go instead with the R rating. There are some bloody scenes, but I feel like from the franchise this is the one that has the least gore or bloody kills. It is more these cute skeletons that raise from the dead in the cemetery, and you see a lot less blood in it. It is also the Evil Dead movie that feels the least like an Evil Dead movie because it is in medieval times, and like I said, it's more of a fantasy comedy movie. I would say, you know, this is like the Life of Brian movie from the Evil Dead franchise. That's the movie that comes to mind. I don't know, it just didn't have that same feeling, and I guess that's what I was missing from this film. Even though I rewatched it and I had a good time with it, and I thought the skeletons were extremely cute, and I think it's a fun movie to watch, to be honest, and I could rewatch it anytime, but it's not the one that has the most horror, and that is something that I do like to see in my movies. And even though it's very different from the other ones, it does keep the energy from the Evil Dead franchise, and I thought it was extremely funny. I did enjoy the characters that were introduced in this film. Mostly the Evil Dead 1 and 2 movies, they didn't have like a wide variety of characters to offer, whilst this movie does give us a lot of different characters and monsters, and it was, like I said, a lot of fun, but still my least favorite from the franchise. In number 4, and this might be a controversial opinion, I have the Evil Dead remake from 2013, and let this not fool you, I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was one of the best remakes I've seen from horror movies. Normally I don't enjoy remakes, and I do love this one because they took all the essence from the franchise and then they turned it around a little bit and did kind of an interpretation of addiction together with horror, and I really enjoyed to see that and to see a main character that had different challenges. And what I really loved about this movie is that it felt more serious than the original Evil Dead, and there is a lot of blood and gore in this film. It is one of the goriest from the franchise, so obviously I also did enjoy that. We do have the same essence from the franchise, like we have a group of friends that go to a cabin in the woods. In this case, it's because one of the friends has an addiction problem and they want to do kind of like an intervention and take her somewhere isolated so that she can deal with her addiction and they can help her navigate through that. But things don't go quite as they expected when obviously evil is released and gets into her body. The movie gave us so many good nods to the original, and it had many elements that would please people that loved the original film, but also gave us a lot of interesting new and fresh things. And I feel like a lot of people really enjoyed this one, myself being one of them. I did love that they tried to give this franchise a really interesting story with a background. The characters were great. I think the actors they chose did a really good job. So all in all, it was a pretty good and decent horror movie, and it was a great remake. The good thing about the remake from 2013 and the newest installment in the franchise is that you can watch these movies without being familiar with the source material and you would still love them as horror movies, so they stand alone by themselves. I thought with this movie they did a good job with building up the tension and with all the gore that we got to see, and all in all I really enjoyed it, even though it was not perfect. In number 3, position number 3, we have Evil Dead Rise. Honestly, it was really hard to decide if Evil Dead Rise or the 2013 remake should be in third position, because I feel like I really enjoyed them both almost at the same level. But at the end of the day, there were some things that Evil Dead Rise did that made me enjoy it and love it just a little bit more. Personally, I think it was really smart to take the location from the cabin that we had seen done many times before to an apartment building that was isolated in a way. And also, I feel like I love the concept of having a family being affected by the evil instead of just a group of friends. I feel like having that family core and seeing them turn was a lot more effective when it comes to the emotions, when it comes to the tension. And I love the theme of motherhood that went throughout the whole film from beginning to end. I thought it was a great exploration of motherhood in a horror movie. So I particularly really enjoyed to see that. The movie was dark, claustrophobic, it was gory, it was violent, and it was action-packed. You didn't get a minute to breathe. It was just one disturbing scene after the next one. I thought they did such a good job with the horror, because sometimes you tend to do the same thing over and over again when you have possession stories, you know, stories with people that turn almost into zombies. But I felt like they managed to give us so many different angles and takes and different ways that you could be horrified as an audience, and I feel like it was really effective with the horror. So that's why I put it a little bit on top of the remake of 2013. The movie does have teeny tiny bits of dark comedy, but it's not the most important element, and I really enjoyed that. There were a couple of moments where I giggled or I laughed, but it was not like the whole movie, and it was just like really subtle. And I feel that really works well for me, as opposed to just extremely cheesy and extremely campy. Like, of course, there are times where I love to watch those movies and just for pure fun, but at the end of the day, my favorites are always going to be the movies that are a little bit more serious. A little bit of dark humor sprinkled here and there is okay, but I'm not a huge fan of full-on comedy. Also, the characters in Evil Dead Rise is something that I really loved. I love the sister dynamic. I love to see the sisters and going through all of the challenges that were being put through. I just loved it so much. And there are so many things in the movie that I cannot talk about because are spoilers, but when we're getting towards the end and we see one of our main characters fighting Relentless, I just absolutely love to see that. And I don't know, I felt like for a second we got maybe like a new Ash almost, even though it's impossible to do. Like, the character of Ash is something that is not gonna repeat itself. And we have made it to the top 2. So in my number 2 position, I have placed The Evil Dead from 1981. This was a very amateur film that a couple of friends decided to do, and Bruce Campbell in this movie was great. I loved him so much already in the first movie. They were trying to be a little bit funny, but for the most part they were going for a serious horror movie in which a group of friends would go into a cabin in the woods and they would find these recording and this book, and they would unconsciously release an ancient evil that possesses the body of the living and turns them into zombies almost. And you're going to see the friends turning against Ash, played by Bruce Campbell, and he will have to figure out how to defeat this evil before it kills him as well. I really enjoyed the first movie. I thought it was great. The special effects are of course messy. The movie's a little bit messy in general because they truly had no budget, and this is the first movie they were trying to put together, and they were not experienced at all when it comes to cameras, when it comes to how to do fighting scenes, or they didn't know that you had to protect yourself for certain scenes. They would just run against the wall without any padding or anything. Like, they just didn't know what they were doing and ended up making one of the most successful movies, horror movies from the 80s. And this truly shows you what a team of passionate people can achieve with basically no budget and no idea, and trying to wing it and trying to create their own special effects. They would make their blood mixing things themselves. They even mixed coffee to make the blood. Like, they were just trying things out and experimenting, and it completely paid off. And in the number 1 position, obviously because there's only one left, is The Evil Dead 2 from 1987. I feel like because by the time they did the second movie, they knew what they had, and they had the experience of the previous movie. They were able to deliver just an amazing film. Bruce Campbell basically is the whole movie here, and he is the only one we need truly to enjoy the movie. He was absolutely fantastic in this movie. This is one that actually splits really well between horror and comedy. And this, I remember, being the Evil Dead movie that I wanted to rewatch the most. When I was in high school, we were doing some projects to make kind of like a house of horrors, and we were playing this movie on repeat on videotape, and I have really good memories of this film. So I guess also part of what nostalgia reasons is what I have to put it at the top of this list. This movie almost is a recap of the original. At the very beginning, you kind of get the first movie like speed in speed, so you can catch up with what's going on, and then it's mostly just Ash just trying to figure out how to defeat this ancient evil again. The Evil Dead 2 is not a movie that it's supposed to be scary per se, but the maniac character of Ash, how he's kind of losing his own sanity, and all these action-packed scenes, the blood, it just makes it such an enjoyable film. The movie kind of worked as a remake, but like I said, because they had the experience from the first movie, the special effects became better, everything became a little bit better, and the combination between horror and comedy really worked for this. I also feel like this movie is the one that truly established Ash as a hero, and the one that made him the more recognizable as a character. And yeah, Bruce Campbell cannot avoid that he's basically known for the most part from this franchise. For me, this movie really had the most essence of what the Evil Dead is. It had great performance, it had better special effects, it had better camera shots, and all in all, I feel like this movie was also one of the horror movies from the 80s that best represent that horror era. And so for those reasons, you guys, I decided to put it on my first position. Alright, you guys, so this was my ranking of the 5 Evil Dead movies that are currently out. I do hope that Lee Cronin is going to give us more, but we shall see. For now, this is my ranking. Let me know down below what you thought of it. What is your personal ranking? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you as always so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in our next coffee time. Bye.